Bobby has a problem. You see, his teacher is a monster. But when Bobby runs into his teacher outside of school, he learns there is more to her than meets the eye. What do you think that means? There's more to her than meets the eye. Let's read. My teacher is a monster, and we will find out. And you know what she's saying? No, I am not. Look at Bobby's face. How do you think he feels about his teacher? He's saying, oh, look at her. She's got green skin and sharp teeth and big hands and claws and huge feet. And how do you think she's feeling about being called a monster? Her hands are on her hips and her face is looking very, no, I am not. Let's see. And on the back it says, monsters are not always what they seem. And look at that person. I wonder what's going to happen in this story. My Teacher is a Monster by Peter Brown. Bobby had a problem at school. Her name was Mrs. Kirby. Robert! Mrs. Kirby stomped. Move it or lose it. Mrs. Kirby roared. Settle down! No recess for children who throw paper airplanes in class. Mrs. Kirby was a monster. Bobby spent his free time in the park trying to forget his teacher problems. But one Saturday morning, on the way to his favorite spot, Bobby found a terrible surprise. Bobby wanted to run. He wanted to hide. But he knew that would only make things worse. You don't need to raise your hand out here. What were you going to say? I was going to say, hello, Mrs. Kirby. Hello, Robert. I like your enormous hat, Mrs. Kirby. Thank you, Robert. Mrs. Kirby, it's really strange seeing you outside of school. I agree. There was an awkward silence, and then a gust of wind changed everything. That's my favorite hat. My dear old granny gave it to me. Don't let it get away. Got it. Oh, Bobby, you are my hero. I mean, that was very good of you, Robert. You're welcome, Mrs. Kirby. Quack. Those ducks sure do like you. Quack, quack. They know I enjoy quacking with them. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, quack, quack. Quack, 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 quack. When they were all quacked out, Bobby had an idea. You should see my favorite spot in the park. Be careful. Yes, Mrs. Kirby. Hey, Pre-K, take a close look at Mrs. Kirby. Is she starting to look a little different? What do you notice? This is lovely. And then Mrs. Kirby had an idea. Bobby tossed his paper airplane into the sky, and it flew, and it flew, and it flew. I think that was the single greatest airplane flight in history. I think you're right. By lunchtime, Bobby and Mrs. Kirby were happy they had bumped into each other. But they were ready to say goodbye. See you Monday, Bobby. Bye, Mrs. Kirby. Back at school, Mrs. Kirby still stomped. Coming through! Mrs. Kirby still roared, and then the bear said, roar! But was Mrs. Kirby still a monster? Great job, Bobby! What do you think? Do you think Mrs. Kirby is still a monster? Robert. The end. So on this last page, Mrs. Kirby turned green again. Why do you think she turned green again? What did Robert do that made Mrs. Kirby turn from person to kind of monster? And what do you think Robert could do to turn Mrs. Kirby back into a person teacher, not a monster teacher?